Before we dive into this galactic adventure, make sure to smash that like button, drop a comment about what you'd do if you faced the deadliest predator in the universe, and hit subscribe for more epic stories just like this. The galaxy had long whispered about the predator, a creature whose name alone could silence a council of the fiercest hunters. For years, the most skilled bounty hunters traversed star systems, chased rumors, and followed the faintest traces of its existence, yet none had ever claimed success. The predator was a phantom, an apex predator whose intelligence rivaled the most cunning strategists of the galaxy, and whose ferocity ensured that only the foolish or the desperate dared to pursue it. On the edge of a barren, windswept planet, a team of elite bounty hunters gathered around a holographic display that shimmered with energy traces and movement patterns. Vasker, a four-armed reptilian tracker whose reputation for ruthless efficiency was feared in 5 sectors, narrowed his slitted eyes. "The predator has been here," he hissed. "The signs are fresh, but the trail goes cold past the northern cliffs. It knows we're coming." Beside him, Karen, a bulky ex-military cyborg with reinforced limbs and a temper to match, slammed his gauntlet fist on the table. "We've tracked this thing for years, Vasker. Years. How can it keep slipping through our grasp?" Vasker's gaze didn't waver. "Because you think like hunters. I think like prey. That's the difference." Far from their heavily armored cruiser, a lone human moved across the same barren landscape with no more than a battered pack and a pair of worn boots. Rylan Cade, the human, had heard rumors of the predator while scavenging supplies on an outer colony, and while others had dismissed the stories as exaggeration, he felt an almost magnetic pull toward the challenge. Unlike the bounty hunters, he carried no heavy weaponry, no scanning devices, no armor that screamed intimidation. What he carried was patience, observation, and a deep understanding of the subtle rhythms of life and death. Rylan crouched to examine a shallow trench carved into the red soil, noting the spacing of claw marks. Each mark told a story: weight, speed, hesitation. Most beings would see only scratches, but he read the movements like lines in a book. He adjusted his pack, tucked a sharpened blade into its sheath, and continued along the ridge, every sense tuned to the quiet pulse of the environment. Back in the cruiser, the bounty hunters argued over trajectories, energy signatures, and probabilities, each suggestion more desperate than the last. None of them noticed the pattern Rylan had discerned, the subtle hints in the terrain that pointed to the predator's likely resting zones. It was a mistake born of overconfidence, the kind only highly trained but unimaginative beings made. As the planet's twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the cracked earth, Rylan paused atop a ridge and surveyed the valley below. The air was still, almost unnaturally so, and he felt the faint vibration of distant movement beneath his feet. A chill ran down his spine, not from fear but from recognition. The predator was close. Vasker's communicator crackled. "We have movement. Thermal scans indicate large, unpredictable activity. Prepare for engagement." Karen growled. "Finally. Let's end this nightmare." Rylan, however, did not prepare for engagement. He did not raise a weapon, nor did he attempt to signal the predator. Instead, he moved silently as if honoring a pact unspoken between hunter and hunted. Every step was deliberate, measured, and cautious. The predator's intelligence demanded respect. Brute force would not suffice. By nightfall, Rylan reached a shallow cave partially hidden by jagged boulders. Inside, faint signs of recent habitation were evident: broken branches, disturbed dust, faint markings that could have been territorial. His heart raced with anticipation. He had a choice: strike blindly and risk death, or observe and learn. Observation, he knew, often led to mastery. Above him, Vasker's cruiser hovered, scanning with ever-increasing frustration. "It should be here," he muttered. "It always comes here." Rylan, in contrast, slipped into the shadow of the cave entrance and crouched, his breath steady, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. Somewhere deeper inside, he sensed the predator's presence. Not the overwhelming force the bounty hunters expected, not a mindless killing machine, but an intelligent, deliberate being. It was patient. It watched. It waited. And now, for the first time, it would meet a human who understood that patience could be more dangerous than firepower. Outside, the twin suns had disappeared completely, leaving the planet bathed in a cold, silver light. The bounty hunters argued, recalculated, and fired probes into the night, but the signals were faint, scattered, inconclusive. They did not know that the hunt they had pursued for years was about to end, not with a roar of victory, but with a quiet understanding of the one species they had underestimated above all others. Rylan leaned back against the cool rock, a small smile forming on his lips. In the distance, a low, almost imperceptible growl echoed through the cave. The predator was near, and for the first time, it might meet a hunter who thought, and moved, like it did. And so, as the stars blinked alive in the night sky and the galaxy's most feared hunters stumbled blindly in the dark, a human named Rylan Cade prepared to turn centuries of legend upside down in a single weekend. Rylan crouched at the edge of the ridge, letting the cold wind whip against his face, listening for anything that betrayed movement. The predator's subtle rhythms were almost imperceptible, an uneven shift in the dust, a faint disturbance in the air, the low vibration of heavy muscles gliding over stone. Most beings would have overlooked these signs, but Rylan's instincts had been honed on countless worlds where patience was survival and observation was life itself. He adjusted his pack, securing the blade and a small scanner he rarely relied upon. Technology could deceive, intuition could not. While the bounty hunters above relied on energy grids, thermal overlays and motion sensors, Rylan counted on shadows, wind patterns and prey behavior. In this desolate stretch, every movement, every sound, every subtle shift in the terrain told a story. Far above, Vasker's cruiser hovered with the precision of a predator that had grown tired of missing its quarry. Scanners pinged in repetitive cycles, a chorus of artificial certainty. Thermal activity detected at grid 7-3, Karen barked, voice tense with frustration. It's close. We'll flush it out this time. Vasker's claws drummed against the console. Close is not enough. It's clever. It anticipates. This creature doesn't move randomly, it calculates, it deceives. That's why we've failed. Below, Rylan moved with quiet deliberation, tracking signs too subtle to register on the bounty hunter's instruments. A cluster of broken branches hinted at a territorial mark. A series of footprints, large, padded, yet disturbingly silent, led toward a narrow canyon. He paused, crouched over the dust, tracing the arcs with a fingertip. The spacing, the depth, the slight deviation, all spoke of intelligence, not instinct. Rylan's lips curved into a faint smile. Most hunters would rush forward with weapons drawn. He, however, understood that approach could mean death. Observing, waiting, adapting, this was how survival worked against a predator that could read an entire forest as if it were a single organism. As twilight deepened, Rylan settled into a concealed vantage point overlooking the canyon. He scanned the rocky walls and the floor below, noting how the light refracted and shadows shifted. The predator had already been here, leaving traces invisible to the untrained eye. Subtle scuffs on stone, faint remnants of recent kills, disturbed soil that betrayed its path. Meanwhile, the bounty hunter's frustration mounted. We've narrowed its location to this sector, Karen growled. Deploy the shock nets. Vasker's eyes, narrow and calculating, met his partner's. And risk driving it into another system before we can trap it? No. Precision, not aggression, will capture this creature. On the ridge, Rylan watched the canyon deepen into darkness, the twin moons reflecting faintly off jagged cliffs. He felt the faint tremor of a large body moving within the canyon. Not a charge or a rush, but a deliberate, almost languid glide. It paused, sniffing the air. Rylan's heart pounded, not from fear but from anticipation. He had been waiting for this moment, yet he did not move hastily. Every predator valued patience. Matching it would require equal restraint. A low growl resonated through the rocks, so soft that it could have been mistaken for the wind. Rylan froze, breathing slowly, ensuring every movement was silent. The predator was close enough that even the faintest sound might betray him. He studied the angle of the light, the texture of the rock, the way shadows shifted, constructing a mental map of the predator's position. Above, Vasker and Karen deployed drones into the canyon. Beams of light scanned every crevice, sensors humming, but the predator had vanished. Karen cursed under his breath. It's gone. How does it always disappear? Vasker's tail flicked with irritation. Because we hunt with machines. It doesn't. It adapts. It outthinks. You cannot trap what thinks differently than you. Rylan descended carefully into the canyon, relying on the echoes and vibrations he felt beneath his boots. He noted how small prey creatures reacted, subtly shifting to avoid danger. Each movement was a breadcrumb, a signature of the apex predator's path. He followed without haste, aware that a single misstep could trigger the creature's attention. Hours passed and night thickened around him. Stars glittered faintly through the narrow chasm. Rylan's senses sharpened, every muscle coiled, every nerve alert. Finally he reached a small plateau, a natural vantage point hidden from above. Here the air carried the faintest scent, iron, earth, and something more primal, something alive. He knelt, studying the subtle signs. A large print pressed into soft soil, slightly deeper on one side, as if the predator had favored a particular stance. Broken twigs arranged almost deliberately. Even the tiniest disturbance in dust revealed direction and intention. Most hunters would see only footprints. Ryland saw patterns, a strategy, and almost human-like intelligence. In the distance, the predator moved, gliding along the cliff face. It paused, sniffing the wind, ears twitching, muscles rippling under dark scales. It was aware of him, or at least sensed that something intelligent was observing. Ryland didn't flinch. Instead, he mirrored the stillness of the creature, breathing slowly, allowing it to perceive him not as threat or prey, but as another being navigating the same environment. Far above, Vasker scanners buzzed with alerts. Multiple readings, approaching unknown entity. Karen snapped. Finally. Show yourself. The canyon remained silent. The predator remained unseen. And yet Ryland knew. It was not hiding, it was waiting. Waiting to judge if this human was merely another hunter, or something altogether different. Something worthy. Ryland smiled faintly, the tension of the hunt coiling into exhilaration. For centuries, the galaxy's most feared hunters had failed, but he had learned to read the world differently, to move differently, to think differently. By dawn, the outcome of this hunt might not be decided by weapons or scanners, but by understanding. And in that silent canyon, beneath twin moons and the watchful stars, a human prepared to meet the universe's deadliest predator on terms no one else had ever imagined. The canyon was silent except for the faint rustle of shifting dust and the distant whistle of wind curling through jagged rock formations. Ryland crouched low, senses taut, heart steady. He had followed the predator's trail for hours, reading every subtle mark and vibration, until the signs converged on a hidden alcove where darkness pooled like liquid shadow. He paused at the entrance, inhaling slowly, letting his eyes adjust. The predator was near. He could feel it in the way the air seemed heavier, in the subtle tremor underfoot, in the almost imperceptible twitch of nearby foliage. Ryland had tracked dangerous creatures before, but nothing had ever prepared him for this level of awareness. The predator did not merely hunt. It assessed, it calculated, it weighed choices before making a move. A soft, resonant growl echoed from within the alcove. Ryland remained motionless, every muscle coiled but relaxed. He did not step forward. Instead, he crouched, studying the shifting shadows, allowing the predator to reveal itself on its own terms. He had learned long ago that aggression could provoke, but observation could command respect. The predator emerged gradually, a living nightmare sculpted in sinew and intelligence. Its limbs were powerful yet precise, every movement radiated lethal elegance. Scales glinted faintly under the pale starlight, and its eyes, amber and calculating, scanned the surroundings as though measuring the canyon itself. When those eyes settled on Ryland, he did not flinch. He held his gaze steadily, meeting them not with fear but with understanding. Above the canyon, Vasker and Karen watched through long-range sensors, growing increasingly agitated. There! Karen shouted. It's finally exposed. Open fire. Vasker's claws clicked against the console in frustration. No. Wait. Observe. It is not yet threatened. Any attack will drive it away, or worse. Inside the alcove, Ryland remained perfectly still, sensing the predator's hesitation. Unlike other creatures he had faced, this one did not rely solely on brute force. It analyzed patterns, calculated risk, and recognized intelligence in ways few species could. He extended a hand slightly, a gesture devoid of aggression, offering acknowledgement rather than threat. The predator tilted its head, nostrils flaring. A low rumble vibrated through the cavern. It stepped forward, claws clicking softly against stone. Its gaze remained fixed on Ryland, testing, probing, almost like it was trying to measure the human's intent. Ryland did not move hastily. Instead, he mirrored its stillness, matching its rhythm. This was no ordinary confrontation. This was recognition. A sudden noise above, one of the bounty hunter drones, buzzed across the canyon. The predator's ears twitched and it growled more sharply, muscles coiling. Ryland froze, knowing any abrupt move could trigger an attack. The predator scanned the skies, then returned its focus to him, seemingly judging whether the human posed a threat or an opportunity. Ryland's mind worked rapidly, formulating contingencies. He had no illusions. A single misstep could mean death. Yet he sensed a window, however narrow, to communicate without words. Slowly, he lowered his pack to the ground and set down a small container of preserved rations. a gesture of intent rather than weakness. The predator paused, amber eyes following the motion. It sniffed the air, cautious but curious. The human's patience became a test and the predator, a participant. Time stretched. The canyon seemed suspended in tension. Then, ever so subtly, the predator shifted stance, acknowledging the human presence without aggression. Ryland's pulse remained calm. He understood. This creature, which had eluded the galaxy's finest hunters for decades, was recognizing him as something beyond prey, perhaps as a kindred intelligence. Above, Vasker's sensors screamed with activity. It's making contact. Move in now. Karen readied weapons, desperation in his voice. We can take it. We're stronger, faster, better equipped. But Vasker's claws struck the console again. You are blinded by arrogance. Step closer and you will lose everything. Inside the alcove, Ryland took a small, deliberate step closer to the predator. It did not recoil. Instead, it shifted slightly, allowing him to advance. The predator's head swiveled, nostrils flaring, analyzing every micro-expression. Ryland spoke softly, voice steady, more for himself than the creature. I am not here to fight. I am here to understand. For a moment, the predator studied him in silence, a predator weighing the intelligence of a potential adversary. Then it crouched slightly, a gesture almost imperceptible, and exhaled, a quiet puff of warm air that mingled with the cool night. It had chosen to trust, or at least to tolerate, the human presence. The sound of shifting rocks drew Ryland's gaze upward. A drone had landed nearby, its sensors flickering. The predator tensed briefly but did not strike. Instead, it fixed its eyes on Ryland again as though silently asking for guidance. Ryland held its gaze, unwavering. Minutes passed in mutual assessment, predator and human locked in a silent negotiation. It was not dominance nor submission. It was acknowledgement, two intelligent beings recognizing each other's presence and capability. And for the first time, Ryland realized that the creature he had chased for so long might not be an enemy to conquer, but a force to respect, to study, perhaps even to ally with. Far above, the bounty hunters argued fiercely. It's ignoring us. Karen shouted. It should attack. Vasker's tail flicked with exasperation. It does not fear us. It recognizes that this human is different. And it is right to do so. We are intruders. He is a participant. Ryland exhaled slowly, the tension in his body easing just slightly. He had proven, not through weapons or force, but through understanding and patience, that humans could engage the apex predator on equal terms. And yet, he knew this was only the beginning. The predator's trust was fragile, the bounty hunters relentless, and the galaxy would not soon forget that a human had found what the most feared hunters could not. As the twin moons reflected silver across the canyon walls, Ryland crouched beside the predator, two beings separated by species yet united by understanding. The hunt, he realized, had ended in a way no one had predicted. But the consequences, for him, for the predator, for the galaxy, were only beginning. The galaxy did not take lightly the failure of its most elite hunters. Reports of a single human finding the predator in a weekend spread like wildfire, sparking disbelief, outrage, and a grudging admiration in equal measure. News holofeeds buzzed with speculation. How could a species dismissed as fragile and predictable achieve what the galaxy's finest had not in decades? Vasker reclined in the cruiser's observation deck, tail coiled tightly, eyes scanning the data streaming in from multiple sectors. Karen paced, fists clenching and unclenching as he muttered curses in several languages. This cannot be real. A human? It's impossible. Vasker's claws tapped against the console. Impossible is a concept for those who do not adapt. We underestimated him. That is the error. That is what the predator sensed. And now the galaxy must reconsider its assumptions. Meanwhile, Ryland and the predator had moved to a secluded plateau, far from the canyon and the bounty hunter's intrusive scans. The predator had allowed him to approach, its massive form resting with tense elegance, amber eyes following his every movement. Ryland knelt beside it, studying its musculature, the patterns of its scales, the subtle vibrations of its throat as it breathed. It was both dangerous and mesmerizing, an apex predator in every sense, yet it had chosen to acknowledge him. Ryland extended a hand, lightly brushing a scale. The predator did not flinch, only shifted slightly, a subtle acceptance of contact. He whispered softly, not expecting an answer, but speaking because it felt necessary, "We can coexist. You do not need to hide. You do not need to fight unless necessary." For hours he observed, learning the rhythms of its movements and behavior. Every nuance revealed intelligence beyond mere instinct. The predator hunted efficiently, but it also displayed curiosity, calculation, and even restraint. Rylan realized that this was not just a creature of survival, it was a force of nature capable of loyalty, if approached with understanding. Back on the cruiser, Vasker analyzed transmissions from other bounty hunting guilds and galactic authorities. Their shock mirrored his own astonishment, tinged with fear. "They are calling it unprecedented," he muttered. "A single human found the predator without a single casualty. They are reassessing tactics, strategies, everything. Our understanding of the galaxy's deadliest creatures has shifted because of him." Karen slammed his gauntlet fist on the console. "We are being made fools. Years of planning, tracking, and preparation, undone by a single species." Vasker's voice was calm but sharp. "Not undone. Redirected. Adapt. That is what he did. And it is why he succeeded. You cling to brute force, to technology. He relied on intellect and observation. That is what we must learn." Across the galaxy, news reports were accompanied by holo recordings from planets where humans had interacted with dangerous wildlife, showing ingenuity, courage, and resilience. Commentary ranged from awe to anger. Some species feared the rise of humanity, predicting that if one human could tame the untamable, what would happen if humans directed their cunning toward conquest? Others hailed it as an inspiration, proof that even a species with comparatively fragile bodies could achieve feats unmatched by the strongest and most technologically advanced. Rylan, however, was unconcerned with politics or accolades. He focused on understanding the predator, gaining its trust, and observing its behavior. The bond that had begun in the canyon was growing, subtle but profound. He learned the signals of aggression, curiosity, and caution. The predator was teaching him as much as he was teaching it, an exchange without words, a partnership forged in mutual recognition of intelligence. As dawn approached, the predator allowed Rylan to remain close, walking alongside him with measured movements. The human sensed a rare combination of power and restraint, knowing that while this creature could annihilate him in seconds, it chose not to. In that choice, Rylan saw the essence of true respect, power restrained by understanding. Meanwhile, Vasker's communicator crackled with new transmissions. Other hunters were requesting permission to pursue the predator, their voices tinged with urgency and fear. "The human has set a precedent," one voice reported. "We cannot predict its behavior. We risk annihilation if we interfere." Vasker sighed. "Exactly. Interference is no longer an option. Let him continue. Let us observe. Perhaps we can learn more from him than we ever could with weapons drawn." Karen's frustration boiled over. "We're doing nothing while a human strolls where we could not even step safely." Vasker fixed him with a piercing gaze. "We are learning restraint, Karen. And restraint may be the only way to survive when faced with true intelligence." Back on the plateau, Rylan and the predator paused at the edge of a cliff, watching the first rays of sunlight cast long shadows across the canyon below. The predator's stance relaxed, its growl softened into a subtle hum, almost a purr. Rylan extended a hand once more, and the creature pressed its massive head lightly against him, a gesture of trust, an acknowledgement that the hunt was over, but something new had begun. Rylan whispered, "You're not alone anymore. And neither am I." Far above, the bounty hunters watched through their sensors, unable to interfere, their pride wounded but their respect begrudgingly earned. They had come seeking victory through force, yet they had witnessed a triumph of patience, intellect, and empathy. The galaxy would remember this weekend, not for the hunters who failed, but for the human who succeeded where centuries of expertise had not. And as the twin moons reflected off the predator's scales and the morning light painted the canyon gold, Rylan understood that the bond he had forged would have consequences far beyond this planet. It would challenge assumptions, rewrite strategies, and perhaps inspire the galaxy to see humans not as fragile creatures, but as beings capable of extraordinary deeds. The hunt had ended, but the story was only beginning. The predator had chosen him, and in doing so, humanity had claimed a place among the stars far more dangerous, and far more respected, than anyone could have imagined. Rylan crouched on the ridge above the canyon, watching the predator move with measured grace below. Over the past days, a bond had formed between them, not of dominance or submission but of mutual recognition. He had learned to read its subtle signals, anticipate its decisions and respect its power. In turn, the predator had acknowledged his intelligence, his patience and most unexpectedly his courage. The distant hum of Vasker's cruiser cut through the still morning air, an unwelcome reminder that the galaxy's most elite hunters were unwilling to let go of their obsession. Rylan had no illusions, they would try again. But unlike before, he was not unarmed in strategy, only in weapons. He had learned the terrain, the predator's tendencies, and most importantly, the predator itself. Together, they formed a unit far deadlier than any technology or brute force could achieve. Karen's voice crackled through intercepted communications. "We'll drive it out. You cannot hide from us forever." Vasker's claws tapped against the console. "Patience. Observe. The human has found something beyond our comprehension. Interference now risks disaster." Rylan exhaled slowly, feeling the predator's vibrations through the rock. He shifted slightly, signaling the creature with a subtle tilt of his head. It responded instantly, lowering its massive form and stepping into the shadows where they could remain unseen. The bounty hunters above fired pulses of light and energy into the canyon, but their weapons struck only stone. Frustration and desperation colored every movement, yet Rylan remained calm. He whispered, "They don't understand. They never did." A low rumble vibrated through the canyon as the predator crouched, eyes glowing faintly. Rylan understood the signal. They were ready to move, not to attack indiscriminately, but to assert control over the situation. He gestured for the creature to follow as he led it along a narrow ledge that overlooked the bounty hunter's position. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated, designed to showcase their combined intelligence without direct confrontation. Vasker's scanners picked up the shift, and he hissed through gritted teeth. "It's coordinating. The human is directing the predator." Karen's arms shook with rage. "We cannot let this happen. Open fire." The predator stepped into view suddenly, massive and imposing, yet poised with a clarity of purpose that froze the hunters in place. Its roar reverberated through the canyon, more a warning than a threat, a display of power so immense that every seasoned hunter instinctively fell silent. Rylan stepped forward, hands open, signaling control. The predator's eyes never left his, and he knew they were aligned. Then, with a speed and precision that no human or alien could replicate alone, the predator surged toward the hunter's cruiser. Its movement was fluid, almost balletic, disabling energy conduits and motion thrusters without harming the vessel's crew. Pulses of light flickered as systems overloaded, leaving Vasker and Karen trapped in their own devices, their pride shattered by a creature they had long considered untouchable. Rylan watched, a mix of exhilaration and awe coursing through him. This was no longer merely survival, this was mastery. The predator had chosen his side, recognizing that its power, combined with human intelligence, could neutralize the arrogance and violence that had failed for centuries. Vasker's tail lashed in frustration. "We've underestimated them, the human, the predator, everything." Karen's voice trembled. We can't compete. We're nothing in comparison." Rylan felt no satisfaction in their defeat. He felt pride in understanding, in collaboration, in the silent acknowledgement that the galaxy's most feared creature could coexist with a human not through fear, but through respect. He crouched beside the predator, his hand resting lightly on its scaled flank. "You chose well," he murmured. "And so did I." The predator's growl softened, a rumble that seemed almost content, a sound Rylan interpreted as approval. The galaxy beyond the canyon could debate, fear, and speculate endlessly, but here in the shadowed cliffs and beneath the twin moons, a new alliance had been forged. One that would challenge expectations, defy predictions, and forever alter the understanding of power and intelligence. As the first rays of sunlight cut across the horizon, Rylan stood, and the predator mirrored him, a living testament to what could be achieved when patience, courage, and understanding triumphed over brute force and arrogance. Above, Vasker and Karen retreated, their pride wounded but their respect silently acknowledged. The galaxy's most lethal hunters had been bested, not by weapons, but by a human and a creature who had learned to trust in one another. Rylan exhaled, feeling the weight of the moment settle into a calm determination. This victory was not his alone, nor the predator's alone. It was proof that ingenuity, empathy, and courage could rewrite destinies, even against forces that seemed insurmountable. He glanced toward the horizon, knowing that the galaxy would never see things the same way again. The predator followed, a silent shadow beside him, and together they moved toward the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges the stars might hold. The hunt had ended, but a far greater story had begun, one in which humans could no longer be underestimated, and one in which the galaxy would learn that the deadliest predator was not just the one feared for strength, but the one chosen by understanding, trust, and unmatched cunning. Rylan smiled faintly as he walked, the predator at his side, the twin suns rising behind them, illuminating a universe that now had to recognize the brilliance of humanity,